Our next speaker is someone who has shaped the spin-off ecosystem in the UK during the last decades. He is a university and business leader with extensive international experience. This month, he has taken up a new role as Pro-Vice Chancellor for Development and External Affairs at Oxford University. Before that, he has held the chair in Innovation and Technology Management at the Imperial College and was also Vice President for Innovation. We welcome David Gann. Hello, David. We are looking forward to hearing how tech transfer works in the UK.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. I'm just going to share some slides so that we can see. I hope you can see those the images there. Perhaps you just confirm. Okay, great. Okay. Well, look, I'm really delighted to be joining this conference. It's something that I've been looking forward to for some time, and I'm so pleased that it's going ahead with so many people participating. And it's wonderful to hear some of the presentations and messages of support for Austria. And you know, as a fellow European, I'd love to see further development of entrepreneurship coming from the universities in Austria. I'm going to share with you a few ideas, lessons from what I was doing when I was at Imperial College in developing an innovation campus, and a few thoughts about what might be transferable for you as you pursue your own strategies. Let me just start off with a quote from Pasteur in 1854. And bear in mind, he was talking in a slightly different context. He was talking about the field of science where one's observing phenomena. And he said, chance favors the prepared mind. And I hope you'll just remember that quote through my presentation, because what universities can do, they don't always, but they can do, is prepare the conditions for people to be lucky. And sometimes in entrepreneurship, you need some luck. You'll notice that on my title slide, I've got a picture of the Oxford University vaccine, and I'll come on and speak about that in just a moment. Title of my talk is Ideas and Talent, and those are the two connecting pieces that universities really bring. Just by way of background, I'm an academic. I publish books. I write on innovation and entrepreneurship. I lead in the public realm. I'm the chairman of the UK's Atomic Energy Authority at the moment. I've been on the boards of the Ministry of Defence and the Department of Health, and I also work a lot in business. I've had 5 of my own startups that I've founded. Currently working in a venture fund of funds and in the world's leading graphene company as a non-executive director. Let me start off with this question: what university entrepreneurship can bring to a post-COVID world? And I expect you would think of me presenting startups and spin-offs. Well, I want to take a more rounded picture of what universities can deliver and why entrepreneurship is important, because academic entrepreneurs don't necessarily always deliver their ideas through a spin-off or a startup. The same skills that are needed to create a spin-off or a startup can also be incredibly useful when you have to turn your hand to solving other problems. And so the first lesson that I will share with you is that we need universities to be entrepreneurial for all sorts of reasons. And indeed, Oxford had the prepared mind, or prepared minds, which allowed them to get ahead in developing a vaccine for the coronavirus. And in the 3rd week of my new job, I have just been amazed at the impact of the announcements of the success of this particular vaccine. What do entrepreneurial capabilities give you? They give you options. They give you speed and agility. They allow you to use research resources, provide incentives, and create policies. And universities with education and training produce the talent that allow you to implement and, of course, people also come out of those universities and advise governments. And I'm very proud of what Oxford's doing at the moment, because unlike some other vaccine attempts, this particular vaccine is being prepared for a very broad rollout across the world, particularly in places and in countries that couldn't afford Western medicine. And all of these, I would argue, come within a shape of the entrepreneurial mindset. Now, I'm going to talk about creating an ecosystem towards the end of my 15 minutes. But in doing so, I want you just to think about how universities take their ideas out and how they get implemented in applications. The two fundamentals, of course, the two pillars are research and education. The third pillar that we're talking about today is impact, turning outcomes into impact. And there are a number of routes: people, the knowledge itself, and technologies that flow from universities. And I wonder whether we have a coherent enough view of how that happens in different settings in Austria, around the Austrian universities. I spent a lot of time actually putting evidence to this picture for Imperial College when we developed the new campus at White City. The second mind map I want to share with you is one that relates the extent to which ideas are innovative with the extent to which a market is ready to accept them. Now, university professors most of the time like to work in the top right-hand corner on ideas that probably not completely formed, that are breakthrough ideas, research at the cutting edge, we call it. And quite often, there may not be an obvious market for those ideas. That's all right. That's what we need them to do. Businesses, and very well-run businesses with their operational excellence, will sit at the bottom left-hand corner, existing technologies, existing innovations in existing markets. And just as a tease, I've put the pharmaceutical industry in this map. I put the high throughput screening, which is a well-known technique, as part of the drug discovery process. And at the top right, I put Robin Shattuck's self-replicating, self-amplifying RNA approach to creating a COVID vaccine, which is a new type, a breakthrough type of approach to a vaccine. My experience is that we need to keep this system in balance. Universities need to keep driving the frontier, but they also need to be able to meet in the middle with industry if ideas are going to flow into practice. And that's also true in many entrepreneurial scenarios. Let me turn then to entrepreneurship. And in writing a book recently called The Playful Entrepreneur, I was talking with Lord Skidelsky, Keynes's biographer, and I asked him, what would Keynes have to say about the role of entrepreneurs? And I think the answer is a rather nice one. The more unstable the parameters in the world you find yourself in, the more the insights or intuition of the entrepreneur matter. And goodness me, haven't we been through, and aren't we living through, an uncertain world, whichever way you want to cut it, in geopolitics, on the environment and sustainability, pandemics. I hate to mention it, but there's a small Brexit issue going on. All of these uncertainties. For those reasons, we need entrepreneurs to help with their intuition and their insights. And I don't think I have to oversell to you why entrepreneurs are important, but do we really understand what they do? Well, they solve problems. There's something almost innate in entrepreneurs looking for problems to solve or finding opportunities for an idea that they or their colleagues have had. And in doing so, something we often don't recognize enough is that they build organizations to put new ideas into practice. We sometimes talk about innovative business models, but actually underneath those are new ways of bringing resources together, bringing talent together to create solutions. It's not just the technology. In fact, it's often not the technology. It's the way that entrepreneurs will put an idea together with other people and build that organization to create economic and social value. And it's the innovative approach to doing that that often is the winner. And so when we're thinking about supporting entrepreneurs from our universities, let's give some space to the organizational, the management, the new ways of creating business models, just as much as we're looking for a piece of IP from an engineering lab or the medical school. Now, I've had quite a lot of experience in mentoring entrepreneurs over the years. And I think one of the interesting questions at the moment is just how much is coming through in the digital world. Perhaps data-rich startups now are the big thing, and maybe for the next 10 years. And I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts from case studies of companies I've helped. Human-centered predictive AI. Well, this is a company that came out of labs at Imperial with the idea that if we were going to see more autonomous machines in our lives, people needed to be able to know that the machine was reading them and they were reading it. And I love this company because they've developed a new style of interface to Signal. And when I was chair of the Smart London board, we developed the first autonomous vehicles in Greenwich as a test. And we implemented ways of signaling between the autonomous vehicles and pedestrians. And I think there's a whole future here in pattern recognition. And you can just see why new companies will be formed around that. I don't have time to go through all of these. So let me just focus in on the middle one, my friend Chris Tumazu. He's a serial entrepreneur, a wonderful engineer, bioengineer, who created the cochlear implant, which has allowed tens of thousands of profoundly deaf children to hear. And more recently, he created a chip for analyzing DNA samples and made a lab on a chip, one of the first DNA labs on a chip. Now, this is deep science. It's not the sort of thing you can do easily in a garage shed. It's not the sort of thing you can do easily anywhere. And I was fortunate enough to be helping provision wet lab space for his startups so that his businesses could fly. And I said startups because serial entrepreneurs don't stop at one idea. And he has a whole fleet of companies that have come through from his labs. And over the last 6 months, I worked with him very closely to turn one of those companies from a nutrition test in the high street to a COVID test, which is being used now and rolled out across the UK, giving results in the field in 1 hour. And we built a medical diagnostic company in 3 or 4 months and had it fully approved. Now, the reason why I wanted to touch on that is to make the point about speed and agility. I think an entrepreneurial company like DNA Nudge was able to move fast because it had that entrepreneurial flair, mindset, culture, and leadership, where many incumbents find it much more difficult to pivot, as we call it, into new areas. So these are some of the traits of entrepreneurs. And when I'm thinking about what you might do in furthering this in Austria, the opportunity I had for 6 years was to lead the development of a new campus in London, in White City, just west of Imperial College's main campuses. And in the middle of the picture, you can see some of the buildings that I was responsible for getting funded and the strategy planned for putting those together. During that time, we garnered about 1.2, 1.3 billion euros of investment and got that built and moved thousands of people into new labs. And I built brand new incubators. The Europe's largest bioincubator is located there. And some of the lessons that we learned were the ones I'm just going to point to. Quality and scale of deal flow. Well, that means that if you're going to be successful, you have to have high quality science, engineering, academic work, and you have to have enough of it at scale for ideas to continue to flow. This is why there's a concentration in certain places in the world where a lot of this happens. You have to get it right inside the university. You have to have the right rewards to inventors. You have to have the right talent, not just on the technology side, as I said earlier, but to lead and indeed to scale up. And I still worry in Europe, I worry in London that we don't have the talent to scale quickly. The sort of things I see in the Bay Area on the west coast of the US is rather rare in most other places. The sort of finance directors who can lead a company quickly through its next round of growth. You need patient capital. Funders like Amadeus, Hermann Hauser's venture fund, absolutely important, and we don't have enough patient capital in Europe. You need scale-up capital. You need access to different sorts of money to scale quickly. And you absolutely need to think about ownership and control and how to manage those difficult hurdles when a company grows. The other ingredients, which sometimes are not so obvious, corporate and local partnerships, inward investment that you didn't have before, and the right standards and regulatory framework to allow markets to open up. And in a short period of time, when I was managing the development of this campus, this is a 10-hectare campus in West London, one of the largest innovation districts anywhere, I think. This was a wasteland. It was a deprived area with almost no economic activity when we started. 10 years ago, it would have been a dangerous place to walk around. Within a few years, we had a whole host of startups coming there, not just from Imperial College, I'm glad to say. And the delightful point was when Novartis decided to put its headquarters right next door to this campus. And then we knew we'd started to succeed in creating an ecosystem. And this picture, you just have to cast your mind over some of the names, like Airbus, like Saab, like the Ministry of Defense. These organizations wouldn't have come here if we hadn't cultivated a strategy and had the depth of science, the facilities, and the ability to network and connect. And then it becomes a self-propelling economic generating machine, which brings in more. And that was the wonderful joy that I had in starting from nothing and leaving with a whole host of new activities. Now, in my last couple of slides, what does this take? It takes leadership. It takes a culture, the right culture. It takes incentives and rewards. And right inside the university, one has to get this. Needs the right sort of recognition to academics, from the recruitment process through promotions to reviews. High-profile impact awards and prizes help stimulate. Time flexibility. You know, most university academics would love to do some of this stuff, but they are beset with their teaching loads, the papers that they've got to write for their impact statements, and because they're good academics. And we need to think and rethink, how are we going to liberate time in certain periods of people's careers to allow them to start their businesses or enjoy working with industry. And then we need students and student entrepreneurship. And there are far too few universities that really do this well and have proper programmatic ways of engaging the experiential learning that student entrepreneurship can give. And I think that's another side to the modernization that universities will need to go through. And finally, it's not good enough to do this on our campus with our backs turned to the rest of the world. We need to engage, we need to share, we need to communicate. We need to create spaces for the local community. We need to create spaces for companies to come and play with technology. And one of the things that I was able to do was bring in other money to create reach out centers, hack spaces, invention rooms, places where people could come and try ideas. And I think the communications side of this is terribly important. And having come into Oxford less than 3 weeks ago, and then announced the major vaccine, it's just extraordinary, the impact, if you get your communication right, that this can have in putting a spotlight on what the university can do for the world. I mean, within 48 hours this week, we had 22,000 media mentions around the world, and 3,000 times our academics were on the broadcast media all over the world talking about the vaccine developments. That is wonderful because it reinforces our messages and acts as a magnet for more things and attracts people. And then we can keep the entrepreneurial spirit alive, and new endeavors will occur. So I think at that point I'll pause. I do blog on these subjects for the World Economic Forum, and I've just written 3 blogs on university entrepreneurship. If anyone's curious, the details are there. And I'll hand back over to our hosts at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, David. At this point, I want to congratulate you to your new role in the name of Herman and also in the name of the conference committee. You are a university leader. You have shown us what Oxford has, the campuses it has, and there are also other top universities in the UK. You as university leader, how would you describe the steps that the ecosystem in the UK went through in order to get to the point where the UK is today?
Yeah, well, that's a lovely question. Let me say that I've been an academic and a business leader for a long time. The steps started in 1992 for me, and that was when we had a government policy from a science minister called Realising Our Potential. And that policy led the research funders to open up new channels of money for collaboration between scientific research and industry. I was then one of the innovative manufacturing professors that was working at that interface between applied sciences and engineering and the academic theorized work in labs. And it took us 10, 15 years to build the right culture to understand each other, and it's still a journey we're on in the UK. A lot of this can be learned through how we collaborate with larger businesses and can we get those fits to work properly. And that set the scene, I think. I think the entrepreneurial side took off, and Herman said in his introduction, a little bit later than that actually, but it was built on the bedrock that we had professors in our labs in up and down the country who had a disposition to collaborate and to seek putting their ideas into practice. And I think that then helped the entrepreneurial side to take off, the spin outs, the startups. I joined Imperial 18 years ago. Of course, I'm no longer there. I'm just joined Oxford, but I joined before we really got our Imperial Innovations machine working, and was one of the leaders there who helped to float our technology transfer office on the stock exchange to create a large resource that we could self-invest in our pipeline as spin-outs. So we had to do a lot of things at the time to create the money for venture funding and so on. And those were the early days, as Herman knows, of the VC industry in the UK. And we had to have all of those things come into place. It takes time. You need to be patient, but you need to keep motivated and move all of these pieces to make it happen.
David, we obviously, as Austrian ecosystem, don't have the same amount of time that you had as a pioneer who started at the very beginning. Do you think that the learnings that you're sharing with us can help us speed up or even leapfrog, so to say, some developments in order to get to the goal faster?
Yeah, look, you've got a leapfrog and we've got to learn from you. So we're looking, the spotlight's on you now. You've put your heads up and go for it. Look, the impediments are not the will to do it. It's the culture that's embedded in parts of our system. And, you know, the cultures of many universities are just not right. The structure's not right. I shiver sometimes to think about this because I know what it's like to try and make changes happen. Even in good universities, it's difficult. But we, as I mentioned in my talk, you know, we don't have the career pathways, the incentives, the rewards. We don't recognize some of these things. And we have leaders who perhaps are not so interested in these matters. And we don't have enough diversity of people on the boards of our universities to push for it. And so culture will trump innovation. every single time. If you haven't got the culture there, you'll go 30 years before you can get it right. You can learn that and try and do something about it now and leapfrog what we've painfully gone through in the UK.
Great. Maybe in terms of structure and what you've been through in UK, how does your structure now at Oxford, let's say, transfer office look like? Just to give us like short insight on that. How do you structure that in terms of people, competencies, and so on and so forth?
Well, look, I'm going to duck that question because I've been at Oxford for 17 and a half days.
Okay.
And I know intimately how we did this at Imperial. And so I could answer from there.
Yes.
And say that we developed our technology transfer capability over many, many years to the point that we had a team that had critical mass. And as a previous speaker said, I think Mark Ferguson, very importantly, you need people in technology transfer who have practical experience. And at Imperial, we managed to build a team of excellent people who had experience in particular segments. So we had a team that could work on life sciences and things like synthetic biology. We had a team that could work on engineering technologies. We had a team that could work on digital. The pathways to market, to creating companies in each of those areas, is to some degree specialized. Different types of VCs work in those areas. There's different timescales. There's different ways of dealing with intellectual property. You need that expertise. Now, I said at the beginning, you need critical mass because a university will never hire the right people in technology transfer if there's nothing much for them to do. And too many universities don't have enough ideas flowing to hire the good people in there to run those offices. So you need perhaps to think about linking universities, clustering them together so you can have a super tech transfer capability with the right people in there. Imperial, which is a very, very big science and engineering school, you know, one of the biggest in Europe, and it had enough deal flow internally at the high quality end for us to build that team in-house. But not many universities can do that. I used to get lots of visitors coming to me saying, how can we copy Imperial? I said, unless you've got that size of ideas flowing through, you're not going to do it. Do it a different way because you still need to do something.
Fantastic insights and advice. Maybe just a very, very quick last question because we're over time. There is some discussion going on in the chat about people who are supporting startups in these structures, be it incubators, accelerators, universities. Do you think they need to have entrepreneurial experience themselves in order to support entrepreneurs?
It's helpful. I mean, it's helpful to a point, okay? I mean, there's many different bits of expertise we need. I heard someone talk about design thinking earlier on. You know, I built a relationship with the Royal College of Art with Imperial, and we set up a new school, the Dyson School of Design Engineering. Designers have a lot to offer because they understand what users might want to do, the functionality. And so we need to take support in from different areas. We certainly need some entrepreneurs, but then, you know, we need to qualify that those entrepreneurs are going to behave in the right way to support our students. And so we set up a mentoring service to mentor the entrepreneurs who were doing their own mentoring at Imperial. So we raised the quality bar on the type of people who are working with us. And that's something else which will be very necessary. Otherwise, you might have partial advice, which may not always be useful for the teams.
David, fantastic insights. Thank you so much for taking time. We will see you on our panel in, I think, 1 hour approximately, or very shortly. Thank you for now for your insights, and thank you for all the questions in the chat. Thank you.